Welcome back to Shine In and Out, the space where science meets soul. I'm your host, Sammy Stoltz, and today we're joined by Jamie Hughes, who is a writer, coach, and nonprofit leader whose journey shows that the human spirit is remarkably adaptive. Jamie turned his early experiences of abuse and depression into purpose, helping others heal through story, compassion, and self-understanding. Together, we will explore how trauma imprints on the body, how the brain can rewire toward peace, and how the soul finds its way home. Before we begin, let's ground this conversation in some science, as we love to do here. Trauma isn't just emotional. It has biological signatures. When we face overwhelming stress, the brain's alarm system, the amygdala, goes into overdrive. And the prefrontal cortex, which is our center for reason and calm, subsequently turns off, or at least dims its light, let's say. So in trauma survivors, this pattern can persist in the body, and it locks the nervous system into the state of hypervigilance, otherwise known as fight or flight. And luckily, here's the hope. The same neuroplasticity that once recorded that fear can now be used to shift towards safety. So practices like mindfulness, breath work, therapy, narrative reframing, all of these can literally reshape those same neural pathways. That way we can rewire that survival instinct into self-regulation. So this is just a reminder of many that healing is not about forgetting. It's about teaching the body that the danger has passed. Let's jump in. Jamie, welcome.
Thank you for having me here.
Of course. I'd like to start with all the way at the beginning. What moments and realizations led you to start sharing your story publicly?
Hmm. Wow. Just to go back to the beginning, as you say, I was as a child, experienced major trauma, use, depression growing up. So all of those things fed into my lifelong pursuit of healing for myself. And then as I began to do more of that intentionally, and began to study psychology. I knew that I wanted to help others. I just didn't know how, and so that part kind of grew as well. It kind of grew, I guess, at the same time as my healing.
That's beautiful. I actually have a note on my desk that says something along the lines of that, like, I will be taught how to heal others as I am healing myself. So that's really beautiful.
Yes, that's a good
and
quote.
and
Yeah.
beautiful that you took it into that positive, first of all, developing that love of developing yourself, right? That self-growth, I think
Mhm.
having that mindset is one of the most powerful things, because from there,
Mhm.
there's nothing that can stop you from getting better every day.
Yeah, and I think I know, at least for me and for many people I've talked with, when you're in the middle of struggles, whatever that might be, whether it might be growing up in an abusive home, dealing with trauma, struggling with a mental illness. When you're in the middle of those things, you don't see that picture at the end. It's not something that you're sitting there thinking, okay, yeah, I'm going to, grow and heal, and I'm going to learn all this stuff to help other people. A lot of times you're just in survival mode. And so the quote you mentioned, as you heal and grow, that's when you can kind of start to see, I hate the, I hate the phrase, the silver lining, but you can kind of start to see some of the daylight. And most people that have been through something traumatic, something painful, have a desire to help other people because they don't want to see other people hurting either. They know what it feels like. And so I think that's somewhat the reality of growth and healing from trauma, mental illness, things like that, abuse, is that you have to make it to a certain point before you're not in survival mode anymore, and you can see clearly to help yourself more and help others.
Totally. I think that's all of our journeys. Those of us that are following purpose and passion. Um, I had my own battles with chronic illness, mental health, and the biggest pull for me to release these podcasts and to help the people that I'm trying to help, which is everyone, because we all have stuff we go through, is that I know that pain, simply as you said. So, how did your early experiences shape the way that you saw the world, and how did that shift? When was your moment of deciding to come from the perspective of healing instead of perhaps victimization?
Hmm. So mine started when I was very young. Um, my mom was single. My mom and dad got divorced when I was like a year old, and it was obviously very nasty because I never even saw my dad as a child. I didn't even know I had a father. And I know that sounds like I'm just being sarcastic, but I'm being very serious. There were no pictures. There was no names mentioned. It was non-existent. So it was just me and my mom. My grandparents on her side, I definitely had a great relationship with them. We lived close to them for a long time. And then when I was 8 years old, my mom started having some health problems. She ended up going into the hospital for some tests. And one Saturday morning, when I was sitting on my bed watching cartoons, my grandmother came in and sat beside me and said, "She's not coming back." And she passed away when I was 8 years old.
Oh,
So that trauma, obviously, like anybody, you know, had a huge impact on my life. And that was the loss of the person that loved me and took care of me. And that was the only parent I knew. Um, Within a month or two after that, the my grandparents wanted to get custody of me, so they went to the family court, and the family court said no. If his dad's still alive, he should go live with him. And so I was made to go live with somebody I had never even seen, didn't even know his name or who he was. It's just some guys, they said, "This is your father." And he was not happy about that. I was an intrusion. He already had remarried, so he had another wife, he had another child. He lived not extremely far away, but across the state from where I was. So I had to go live in a new home with a new family, a new city, a new school, everything. And it was rough from then on. I never got the opportunity to grieve. It was discouraged. Here I was as at that time, a 9-year old boy. If I started to cry about missing my mom, I was scolded. I was told no, I needed to be a man. I needed to quit crying like a baby. And that was that was unfortunately the norm of the treatment. And that lasted throughout my entire teenage years, all the way up until I was 18, when I had a suicide attempt. And that suicide attempt, I ended up going to the hospital and then seeing a psychiatrist. That was the very first time I'd had any type of mental health treatment. So from 9 to
more
18, I was
validation, I'm
living
sure.
in depression and no, I had never fully grieved. Was living in depression. And so it was rough, you know. Um, Obviously, there were some good times, but for the most part, one of the one of the symptoms that I've noticed over the years is that there are whole blocks, and I mean some of them years of my childhood that I have no memories of, that my subconscious just totally blocked out. And even now, after many, many years of healing and work and growth, I have to think. I have to really concentrate to remember some things. And there are just sometimes whole stretches that I don't remember. And that unfortunately is common for people that go through abusive childhoods, traumatic childhoods, things like that. Uh, One of the main things or main times, I guess, that started the turnaround, um, even though I talked to a doctor and a therapist when I had the suicide attempt, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to start healing. I wasn't ready to take it seriously at that time. I was still very much in survival mode, and even calling it survival mode is probably an exaggeration. But it took a few years for me to kind of live a very dark life before I hit bottom again, and not in the terms of suicidal ideation, but in terms of just living. And I reached back out to my grandparents and said, "Hey, I'm homeless and I don't have a place to live. I don't have a job." And so they took me in. And then I was around 20 years old when that happened. And they took me in. I started to eat regularly, which sounds funny, but you know, my grandmother, of course, cooked. And so I ate. And my grandfather helped me get a job and they helped me with transportation. I actually started to live a normal life. And it was enough to stabilize me to where I could see myself getting help. And that's when I started actually going to therapy. And then within a couple of years of that, started going to college and studying psychology. So that was that was the period where it all kind of started to go uphill a little bit.
Wow. To go through something so traumatic like the loss of your mother, and then to be forced into an unfamiliar environment with none of the validation that you need, especially as a young boy, is incredibly, I can't even fathom how difficult that was. And I'm sure you wonder how things would be different if you were able to stay with your grandparents. I wonder if at this point you have any regrets or if you're glad for the person that you are today.
That's a tough one. That's really tough because my trauma and mental illness say, oh, yeah, there's horrible, there's regrets, there's blah, blah, blah. But then there's the other side of me that has experienced growth and healing and accomplishments and having my two children and, you know, getting an education, working in the helping profession for many years. So there's so much more that have come from that that have been positive. There's still that shadow there, but I think overall there's no denying that I wouldn't have been able or probably even willing to help the people I've helped if I hadn't have come through those circumstances. I probably would not have gravitated towards psychology, wouldn't have got my bachelor's degree, wouldn't have got my master's degree, wouldn't have studied and researched the topics I did, wouldn't have written 4 books to help other people with mental illness. I certainly wouldn't have done all that if I hadn't gone through those experiences. I wouldn't have had the motivation to. I wouldn't have had that desire, like I said earlier, about knowing what it feels like. So wanting to help others share in what I've learned, share the not just the academics, but the wisdom of growth. So yeah, I'm very proud of what I've gone through and where I'm at now.
As you
But
should
there
be.
are still times where there's that little shadow that wants to peep up and say, "Hey, yeah, but." So, and
Of
I
course.
think that's common with anyone, even after a lot of healing and growth. If you went through years and years of trauma or abuse or sickness, you're almost never going to be 100% free from those memories and from the effects that it's had on you.
Yeah, and even, there have been a lot of times when I'm like, oh, I'm going backwards. Like, I thought I healed from this because something keeps popping back up. But it's really your body wasn't ready to handle all of it. And so we're going to tackle a little bit at a time, and it's not going backwards. You're always moving
Mhm.
forward. Um, and I love what you said, the distinction between the wisdom of growth versus the knowledge that you can share to help people, because absolutely. Everything that I've been through, I am grateful for, in the sense that I would not be able to help people the way that I do. I would not be able to understand the people that I want to help. And I wouldn't be so abundantly inspired every day to create a world where people don't suffer in the way that I did. So
Mhm.
when you were talking about having your children, it makes me think about how every generation we get better, right? Whether because we want to keep things or absolutely do the opposite of what our parents did. So I'm curious, as a father, what your focus has been. As somebody who wasn't validated for your feelings, are you very validating of your children and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, probably too much sometimes. So and they're both older now and in their 20s, but when they were young, I intentionally kept speaking to myself in that, okay, here's how I want to raise them. Here's how I want to give them what I didn't get in terms of encouragement, validation, like you said, letting them know their worth, their value, their importance. And so I tried my best to do those things. And nobody's perfect. And, you know, a lot of times as parents, we have guilt, regardless of our background. We have guilt about uh, things I did, things I didn't do, things that went wrong. And that's just normal life. I mean, it just is. But I love being able to encourage my kids to do things, to try things, and to teach them how to bounce back, uh, how to teach them that failure is not the end, that it's a part of the process. And all those things that I didn't learn growing up. I didn't have anyone to teach me those things. The only thing I had that was taught to me was that I was worthless, that I was a failure, that I was unwanted. So becoming a father, it was very intentional on my part to try my best to give my kids those things. Well, I think for the most part it worked. We have really good relationships. So I'm
That's so
happy.
beautiful. I'm so glad to hear that. Um, yeah, there's no perfect way to be a parent. Even the things that my parents did that were technically the right thing to do somehow still messed me up. So there's, no guilt,
Uh,
no pressure because we all end up exactly who we're meant to be to have the impact on the world that we do. So, of course, biologically, there's an entire other factor to the mental health and to the trauma. Did you experience like having to do extra things for your body, not just your mind as you were healing, because of that overactive stress response due to your early trauma?
yes, that is the right question. um, this is one of my favorite subject areas in terms of studying mental illness,
Me
is
too.
that when I started my healing, so when I first started going to therapy and even going to a doctor to get on medication for depression, there was there was almost no talk of holistic healing. There was almost no talk of exercise and diet. There was no talk of meditation. All those things I had to learn as I went along and just either studied it on my own or talked with other people. And over the years, the more I've read and listened, the more I've realized, wait a minute, this is a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. Therapy is absolutely great and needed, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. Medication is absolutely great and needed when done right. It's just a piece of the puzzle. But there's so much more when it comes to exercise. You mentioned your body's response. So something that we've learned a lot over the past few decades in psychology is that it's not just your mind. So when you have something that's, whether it's trauma, whether it's a mental illness, it's not just a repressed memory. It's not just your brain thinking a certain way and your subconscious. Your nervous system throughout your entire body stores this stuff, and it changes the way your body produces, or at least the amount it produces, of hormones and neurotransmitters that all have an effect on your mental health. Um, you hear about the gut brain connection. That's become very popular, which it should be. Your gut microbiome produces good, healthy bacteria, which helps regulate and produce dopamine, which goes to affecting mental illness. I have ADHD. If you know anything about ADHD, it's an issue
Yeah,
tied
I
to
do.
dysregulated dopamine. And if you have ADHD, it's almost guaranteed you probably have some gut issues. Could be like IBS, it could be acid reflux, it could be just anything, because they're tied hand in hand. And your nervous system produces cortisol. When you go through a traumatic event, your body ramps up cortisol to help you either evade or defend from that traumatic event, whatever it is. Well, if you experience that over and over again, your body kind of gets stuck. And so now you're always producing cortisol. So now you've got anxiety because you've got this, response system overactive in your body. It's like having a gas pedal in a car and putting a brick on it. It just stays there. And so, yeah, the diet and the exercise part of mental health is so underrated. It should be the very top of what's recommended for treatment, along with other things. Again, all of these are pieces of the puzzle, but especially when it comes to holistic care with diet, exercise, meditation, journaling, things like that. Those are things you can do and you can do every day that will have long term effects, and year after year after year Your symptoms are less. They happen less. They're less severe. You learn how to regulate yourself so that even when things still happen, because life still happens, you're so much more equipped to respond to things instead of just react. So yeah, I love that question. It's the best.
And I love your answer. I am all about the holistic healing. I When I was on my own journey with mental health and physical health, I refused to take medicine until I handled all of those things first, because odds are that is a huge cause of any type of dysregulation. Like you said, the gut microbiome. I mean, what percentage of your serotonin is made in the gut? It's insane. People don't think about that. And same thing with dopamine. And we look at
Mm-hmm.
all these increases in diagnoses, mental health in children, and it's like, well, yeah, because they're being fed things that aren't conducive to a healthy microbiome, a healthy body in general, and you know all of those things. So, I've been very deep into the psychoneuroimmunology. I think it's so interesting. Um, and the body does store these things, especially, you know, now these new studies of epigenetics, how it's actually, influencing which of
Mm-hmm.
your DNA is expressed and all of those things. Um, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to recognize those small things that you're talking about, the journaling, the self-regulation, but it is nice to show yourself that you can handle anything and to get yourself through anything, because you can feel that independence and that trust in yourself. And as you develop that, even though
Mm-hmm.
life continues to be difficult in its typical ways, you feel more equipped to handle it. And I describe it as it's a compound interest effect. You're not going to see results immediately. And
Yes.
that's why so many people don't stick with it. Of course, you don't get that like reward. So let's keep doing that like you would for eating sugar or, or, indulging.
Uh-huh. Yep.
So how do you recommend to people to stick with these things despite not having that initial feedback?
I wish there was a good answer, an easy answer for this, and there's not. Um, I, yeah, there, you mentioned earlier about when you're making progress and then you kind of have a setback of some sort,
Yeah.
and it's discouraging. And it was funny when you said compound interest, this made me think of this comparison, and it's like looking at the stock market. So if you pick any company stock, let's just say Apple, and overall, their stock has gone up. Well, if you zoom in on a month or a week, it's crazy. It's up and down, up and down, up and down. But overall, it's still going up. And that is the same concept with healing, is that it's going to go up and down, up and down. You're going to have success, you're going to have setbacks. And when you're working on long-term healing, you just have to set your mind to that and say, I'm not doing this for today. I'm not doing this to just magically get better tomorrow. I'm doing this so that I can enjoy the rest of my life, so
And
that I can achieve the things I want to, my goals. I can have good relationships throughout life. So, not just today, not just tomorrow, but long term. And when you can accept that, when you can wrap your mind around that, then you know you're going to have ups and downs, just like the weather. It's sunny. Tomorrow it might be rainy. Guess what? After a day or two of rain, guess what's going to happen? It's going to be sunny again. And you, we have to kind of, accept that we are part of nature. We're not separate from nature. We are nature. We're a part of it. Just like any tree, any fruit, any animal, we're a part of where we live. So we go through the same cycles, same growth, death, ups and downs as anything else. And that's normal. And I know when you've been through something painful, when you've been through maybe even years of anxiety, depression, PTSD, physical disease, whatever, you just want it to go away. You just you want it to be fixed. You don't want to have to go through the ups and downs. But people that look like they don't have any of these problems, guess what? They have those ups and downs too. That is actually the norm. That is normal life. So committing to something, first of all, is just committing to the fact that it's going to be long term, not just now. The other key piece, I think, that, and a lot of people, I think, teach this well in terms of coaches and therapists and teachers, is to take small steps. So just take that next one step. So for instance, we'll look at diet or exercise, either one. Both of those are kind of easy to understand. If you said, okay, well, if fixing my diet is going to help my mental health, then tomorrow I'm going to go in my kitchen, I'm going to throw away all the sugar, all the cookies, I'm going to throw out all the soda, I'm going to throw out all the bread that's got styrofoam particles in it, I'm going to throw, and I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy oranges, broccoli, chicken, and that's it. That's not going to work. You might do that for a day or two, but you're not going to stick with that. Nobody is. I don't care what anyone says. That's not realistic. So pick one thing. Pick one thing. Say, okay, well, I drink sodas almost every day. Okay, well, let's start cutting back on that. Because we know for a fact there's thousands and thousands of studies that show how bad sodas are for you. So can we cut that back to, let's start with, I'm allowing myself 1 can or 1 cup of soda a day for this week or the next 2 weeks. Then in 2 weeks, okay, now I'm going to cut that back to 3 times a week. Maybe on the weekends I can have soda. You have to take it in pieces, in small pieces. You will make more progress. It will give your body and mind time to adjust so that it feels natural. Same with exercise. You're not going to go to the gym tomorrow and spend 3 hours running on the treadmill, lifting, deadlifting 400 pounds, doing 400 jumping jacks. You're just not. You might, but you're going to kill yourself. You're going to regret it, and you're never going to do it again. Start with one thing. If you have a sedentary lifestyle and you want to make improvements, and you know that just exercising regularly is going to help you physically and mentally, start walking. Just say, okay, I'm going to start 30 minutes 3 times a week. That's all you have to do. Start with that. So yeah, take a long-term approach, accept that that's normal and that that's what's going to be better for your life. And then take one piece at a time, one step at a time, and start working your way in that direction.
Jamie, I could not agree more. And the reason why you had me giggling back there was because many versions of me have been guilty of the tomorrow I'm going to change everything at once, do it all. And you're completely right. You're completely right, because you are only punishing yourself and you're not giving yourself space to do something small and then be proud of yourself and be inspired to do more. And what you said about the one good decision at a time. Like, I would say, I'm going to eat super healthy all week, and then on Tuesday, I had something sweet for breakfast, and then the rest of the day, I'm like, oh, well, whatever. I already had sugar, so I'm just gonna have all the sugar that I want because tomorrow I'm not allowed to have it again.
Yes.
Um, but
Yeah.
no, the reality is make each next best decision. So whatever next decision you have to make, do what you can to make it better than the one you did before. Not a cascade
Yeah.
of I already messed up, let's keep messing up. Um, and truthfully, the more I go through life, the more I see that each of the phases of difficulty are transitory and the pain is temporary.
Uh-huh.
But for the people that are first starting out, like if it's your first painful experience in life, it's very difficult to fathom that you're going to be able to get out of that. But we need to normalize the ups and downs. I, day by day, have ups and
Yes.
downs. I'm one day kicking butt at work, the next day absolutely dreadful. And I'm thinking, wow, I wonder if my boss thinks I'm slacking, but it's my physical health, it's my mental health, and I'm kind of on a roller coaster all the time. But if we normalize that and
Uh-huh.
we give each other space to be human, I think it creates a much healthier, happier environment to just be as you are and feel accepted as you are. And I love what you said about us being a part of nature because I tell that to my clients all the time. We have seasons too. I know myself.
Uh-huh.
The first few winters I was affected and I was like, man, I'm depressed. This is going to be me forever. Why am I stagnant in my growth? Why am I not inspired to go to the gym? You know, beating myself up and then realizing, oh, I needed seasons too. Summer, I kicked butt every day and I was on top of it. Winter, I need to rest. So, I mean, I'm sure it's different for everybody,
Uh-huh.
but giving yourself that space to be nature, like you're natural, you're not going to be on all the time. Nothing in nature is on all the time. We're all just going back and forth through
Yeah,
equilibrium.
absolutely. Yeah, you
So that's
don't
really,
when it starts snowing in the winter, you don't just go outside and say, "Hey, stop. I need you to stop right now so I can go on with my life." That's not going to work. What you said about giving yourself that space and that time is so important because that's something that you should learn in healing and growth is that it's not about doing away with all of the bad stuff. It's learning how to live with it so that it doesn't affect you as much and you learn you learn how to manage it. So, and I'll share this as an example, and I preface it right off the bat. This took many, many years of healing and growth, but my depression, you know, at some points was so bad that if I went into a depressive episode, it would last a month, 2 months, maybe longer. You know, there would be ups and downs during that time, but there would be long stretches where overall I was depressed or numb. And after a time of that healing and growth, it started getting less and getting less and getting less to where I ended up a few years ago. I mean, it's been a while, but I can distinctly remember where I reached a point that when I woke up in the morning, I could feel it in my body if I was going to have a depressive episode. I could just sense it. I knew that I felt off before I even had any thoughts of I'm sad or woe is me or whatever. I could feel it. As soon as I got up, I knew something was off. And I had learned to recognize it so distinctly that I also knew that it was only going to last about 4 hours. So I knew
hmm,
when I got up and I had that feeling, I knew to adjust my schedule or to allow myself the time not to try to fight it, not to try to do stuff to hide it, overcome it, anything, but just to allow it, just to settle in it And I knew that within about 4 hours, I was going to come out of it. And it only happened maybe once every 5 or 6 months. That's how
Wow.
attuned I had become because I took all those steps to healing and growth and to studying myself. And that's where I came out of all that with the saying that, become a student of yourself. This is the most important thing that you can do. If you can become a student of yourself, you can start recognizing things like triggers. You can start recognizing things like seasons, like you mentioned, because you're going to go through them. Just start recognizing them. And then you're like, oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I see this is what's happening. I know how to deal with it now. It makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely. And acknowledging the last time that you felt that way and how long it was. I think journaling is so helpful in that regard. If you're not somebody that can
Mhm.
keep up with it, that's totally fine. But when you get through those phases, taking a conscious moment to look back and say, I was so worried and it worked out, so that next time I'm that worried, I can tell myself it's going to work out. And that has been so helpful to me
Yes.
as a whole. I love that you're talking about working to understand yourself better and that giving yourself that space, it's truly what you resist persists because your brain doesn't
Mhm.
understand the negative of things. It's like, don't focus on the fact that you're depressed. All it's saying is it's like when you're biking and you're like, don't hit that pole, but you're looking at the pole and you hit the pole because you're so focused on the pole. So absolutely
Yep.
giving yourself that space, not putting the pressure on it. And I'm curious, as a person with a family and knowing how it can affect you and your relationship toward them, have you developed tools, first of all, to preface how you're feeling that day or tell them how they can best support you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's a huge relationships in general when you have dealt with mental illness are just they're just difficult. Relationships are hard anyways, even for people that don't have mental illness or neurodivergence or trauma or anything else. Relationships are just hard anyways. So when you add something else on top of it, something that says internally, they don't love me, they don't want me, I'm just in the wrong all the time. It affects how you see yourself. It affects how you see the world around you. So relationships is something that definitely takes some effort and help. If you can get help from a therapist, a coach to work on those, you it's worth its weight in gold. One of the things that I learned was to one, be open and honest with the people I'm close to. So my kids, my best friends, so that if I'm in a relationship with someone, if it's at that point, at the correct time and point, I'm very open and honest. I here's kind of what I've struggled with, and it still comes back occasionally, and here's how I deal with it. Here is my cue. If I am having a depressive episode, they know if I say I'm just having a bad day, that's it. That explains to them why I may be acting odd, why I may be
Hmm.
quiet, why I may seem sad. If I'm sad for some specific reason, like, oh, I don't know, Iron Man died in the Avengers movie. Oh my gosh, I'm sad. There's a reason for that. I can articulate that. If
Hmm.
if it's from depression, it's just that general sadness. So there is nothing specific to tie it to. But I can say, I'm just having a bad day. They know what I mean by that because I've already told them that's what I mean by that. And they know that to say, is there anything I can do? And if I say nope, then don't do anything. Just know that in a few hours or tomorrow, I'll be fine. I'll be right back to normal. If there is
Yeah.
something I need, I'll try to say it. I'll try to say, like, I could just use a chat. I could just use a hug. I need coffee and ice cream. And I try not to abuse that, but um,
It
in
works.
other words, yeah, I, and again, these are all things that I've learned over time that help
Yeah.
me and that could help others. And you just have to be honest, and if you can give some kind of phrase like that, like I do, it's very helpful to the people around you because they're wondering, oh, you seem off today. Uh, something happened, something wrong. But if they already know that you struggle with a mental illness and that maybe you just want to be left alone, or maybe you need some extra time together, you told them that in advance. So they know what to do,
Yeah.
they know what questions to ask, or they know to just kind of back off and say, I'm here if you need me. So yeah,
Exactly. I
that's a,
think
a very important thing.
it's a very powerful thing too. In a lot of relationships that I've seen and helped people through and been in myself, it's very hard for people not to take things personally. And that is one of the things that I teach, that very
Uh-huh,
rarely is anything personal,
uh-huh.
but from your lens, and the only lens that you've ever lived through, of course, that's natural. So if you're somebody
Yep.
who's going through an episode, taking that extra moment to make it clear that it's not about them, so that they're not, you know, going through all of the what could they be mad about me for, all of those things. It allows them to be more helpful to you as well. And it I always say that you can't have love without understanding, because if you don't have understanding, you're going to be fearful. Are they mad at me? Is there a problem?
Uh-huh.
Is something going to blow up that I don't know about? So as soon as you provide that understanding, mutual understanding, I think it creates room
Uh-huh.
for just the love. And that's what we need a lot of. So that's
Yep.
beautifully said. And like you said, it takes time to evolve. It takes time. First of all, you have to know yourself in order to tell other people what you need. You really do. And if you don't take that
Yeah,
time,
absolutely.
yeah. So I'd like to ask you about this fine line between believing that everything happens for a reason and seeing that silver lining versus validating emotions. Because I always had anxiety through the roof, but I grew up with it, so I was so used to it. But
Uh-huh.
when I had my first depressive episode, that was infinitely more difficult because I didn't know how to handle it. And like you said, it's
Uh-huh.
sadness without cause. And my empirical mind is trying to run through what is wrong? How can I fix this? And there isn't an answer. Um, and it's infinitely more frustrating to try to figure out something that doesn't have an answer. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, with your patients or your clients and with yourself and your friends, how do you dance that line between what you're feeling is completely valid and let's sit with that, and also remember last time you felt this way and thought it would never end, it did.
I think a big part of that is, you know, are you in survival mode? So, like you said, the first time you had a depressive episode, that's not the time to try to talk yourself out of it. That's not the time for CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, which is reframing. That's not the time for that. Think of it just like a physical injury. If you just had a very severe cut to your arm or your leg, and you've got blood pouring out and it burns, that's not the time to think, oh, you know what? I'm going to get over this and I'm going to use my arm again. I'm going to walk again and I'm going to be fine and I'm going to win a marathon or swim or that's not the time for that. The time, what you need in that moment is care, emergency care, if that's the case. So when you're struggling, when you're in that part of the process, the take care of yourself first. Get the care you need first. All that other stuff will come later. Don't try to force yourself into believing something that your mind is not going to accept. Your mind is devastated, it's scared, it's hurt, it's angry, it's numb, it's all those things. It's not going to accept that, okay, yeah, well, if I just keep trying and if I keep a good attitude and in a few years I can actually write books about this and encourage it. It's not the right time. Just say, okay, what do I need right now? How do I sit with this right now? Do I just need to cry it out? Do I just need to go for a run? Do, uh, you know, do I just need to sit and watch TV for a couple of hours, find a movie that I like and just chill out? Do whatever I need in this moment to get through it. And then the very next step is, what do I need to get help with? I need to go to the doctor. Obviously, if my symptoms are overwhelming, then there's something dysregulated physically. I need to address that first. Once I can get kind of stabilized, then I'll have the energy, I'll have the strength, the calmness to think rationally and start getting treatment mentally and then going to a therapist, start researching and learning about whatever it is I'm dealing with, those type of things. Kind of goes back to what we were talking about in terms of diet or exercise. You start with one step. You just take that next step. It's just with mental health issues, and you just have to hang on at first. You have to hang on.
Yeah.
Maybe
It's
a
it's
better
so easy to spiral.
comparison is, yeah, maybe a better comparison is like if you're drowning, you're in the water, your first goal is not to learn how to drive a boat, a speedboat. Your first goal is not to learn how to do the breaststroke and the whatever else. I'm not a swimmer, so I'm going to butcher this, but that's not your first goal. Your first goal is just to survive. It's just to tread water. So just do that. Your next step
Yeah.
is ask for help. If you're treading water now, you're no longer drowning. Hey, can you throw me a life jacket? Can you pull me in? Ask for help. Then once you're in the boat or you've got a life jacket and you're no longer drowning, you're no longer having to tread water, you're kind of stable now. Now you can move on to that next step, to whatever it is you need to do next. So, yeah, just be gracious with yourself. Don't worry about what you need a year from now, 5 years from now. Think about what you need right now
Beautiful.
and what that next step is, and just do that.
That is so powerful. And I love the metaphors that you used because you're right. If you get an injury, you're not going to do PT right away. You're going to rest and give your body what it needs so that you can get through it in time. What came up for me when you were talking is asking for help. That is way easier said than done, and I'm sure you have personal experience with that. I think there's
Mm-hmm.
something societal that tells us that asking for help makes us a burden. Even if we love helping others, we don't think the same of people helping us. How do you frame that for yourself when you know you need help, but you're struggling to ask?
You can say this to someone, and we do. We say this all the time. If you need help, just reach out. If you need help, just let me know. There's every kind of help out there that is imaginable. Um, there's a suicide hotline. There's AA for addictions. There's your medical doctor. There's therapists. There's friends. There's family. It is so scary sometimes to actually take that step. It makes you feel more of a failure to ask for help than it does to deal with the troubles that you've already got. It's a difficult hill to climb. My suggestion for people is if you want better, if you want for your friends and family to have the better version of you, if you want to help people, if, like you said, if you would recommend to someone else that they would get help, then take your own advice. Just do it. It takes more strength to get the help you need than it does to just sit with the problem. So you will be a stronger, better person by getting the help. And
Oh, yeah.
people are people are going to judge you. People judge you when you do the right thing. Who cares if? Of course, they're going to judge you when they think that, oh, well, you're weak and you have to get help. Who cares? They judge everything and everybody all the time. That's just what people do. Just forget them.
Yeah. I I along the way realized that the strongest people are the ones who are brave enough to be that vulnerable because vulnerability is scary. Putting yourself out there, showing that you need help, that you're imperfect, that you're struggling is not the natural thing to do, especially with this thing we have
Mhm.
called the ego and, the desire to feel accepted and um, touted. But vulnerability is strength. It takes so much more
Mhm.
personal power to be fully yourself and to just let what happens after that happen. You're only responsible for your side of any relationship, is what I say. So if I do what I believe is right in asking you for help and you come at me with judgment or the opposite of what I need, okay, I did my part. The rest was your thing.
Mhm.
It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with your life up until this point and how you interpret things. Of course, it's easier said
Mhm.
than done to interpret it that way, but it's taken many years of reframing things for me to get to that place, and it is so much healthier.
Yep.
Yeah. So, for someone listening who is still in the thick of that survival, I think some people don't even know that they're living in survival mode. I sometimes observe in people that I love, and I know what it looks like because I was there, and I try to tell them, and they're like, "Oh, no, no, no. I'm good. Like, I'm good every day." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Like, just let me know." So, if they're feeling stuck or hopeless and just not right, like they know that life should be easier or that it has been easier before in similar circumstances, but for some reason it is just an uphill battle, what would you want to say to them today?
Trust your instincts, your first instincts. Because if you're having to make excuses, if you're having to change your story to cover up what you've experienced, what you're going through, what you feel, if you're having to say I'm good and there's that little tingle in you that knows that you're not, that you're just saying that, then trust your true instincts and your true self and talk to someone, find somebody, anybody, call an anonymous hotline or get online and join a group anonymously and just say, hey, look, here's what I'm struggling with, or here's what I've been through in my life. And other people that have been through the same thing will be very happy to listen. They'll be very happy to share their own experience and encourage you and give you the strength you need to do something different. Um, but yeah, if you recognize that you're having to cover up parts of your life, or make excuses for yourself or others in your life, you know that there's something not right about that. You may not know what. You may not know exactly the cause and the cure, but you know there's something. You're worth investigating that. You're worth taking the time to deal with that. It's going to be hard at first, but the you that you gain and in the end is worth it. And that future you wants you and needs you.
100%. Beautifully put. In that vein, I'd love to end on, you know, for those people that have never taken the time to sit with themselves, because it is a scary thing to do when you've never done it. I would love for you to share some of your tools on those days that you know you're going into an episode, you've out these 4 hours. What are some of the tools that you keep in your toolbox, either on a daily basis or on those critical days that always seem to help you get through it?
My top two are the the cheapest and freest tools that you can have. Number one is
Love
walking.
those.
Go for a walk. Go for a walk. Walking does so much more. It's not just about exercise. It helps to regulate your nervous system. It helps to regulate all of the other systems in your body, your immunity system, your digestive system. It gets you into fresh air. It gets you in the sunshine. If you can walk outside, if you can walk on a treadmill, do that. Whatever you can do, just walk. Just go for a walk. The other one is journaling. Journaling is, to me, has been one of the most powerful tools that I've ever had in my entire life. If I can just sit down and write out whatever's on my mind, not trying to fix it, not trying to interpret it, not trying to do anything but just get it out, I feel so much better afterwards. And then long term, it has so many other benefits as well. Like you alluded to earlier, you can begin to go back and look at patterns and trends and triggers and uh, feelings. But if you're just having that day, just sit down and write, just set a timer for 5 minutes and say, I'm just going to write whatever comes to mind for 5 minutes. I'm not going to stop. I'm not,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not interpreting it. I'm not trying to get anything out of it. I'm just dumping. And you do that. Heck, you can do that. And at the end of 5 minutes, you stop, you take the paper, tear it apart and throw it in the trash, burn it. You, this
Yeah.
is completely up to you. Nobody else has to know. You can you can get on your laptop and open up a document and type and type and type, cuss and cry and whatever else you need to do. And when you're finished, if you don't want to keep it, delete it. I mean, so these are walking and journaling are the two easiest and most powerful tools that you can use.
I couldn't agree more, especially walking in nature if you are able. Just really resets you. Beautiful, beautiful tools, and I really hope to see more people using them. I'm trying to design an app right now, and I'm not by any means a pro programmer, but the tools that I've always wished I had, like the journal that like learns about you and is able to tell you, okay, in the past you had this pattern and here's how you got out of it and here's what worked and what didn't. You know, all of those things that maybe you don't have the time or you don't know which entry to go back into, but I'm filtering it by keyword or by tag or something like that so that more people have this tool.
Mhm.
And it's not just writing. Maybe some people need to speak. So I'll do like a speak to text stuff like that. So I'll let you know when that is fully developed.
Mhm.
But you
Okay, sounds
you
cool.
saying all of those things only renews, yeah, because it's a universal thing that it's helpful to write things out. It slows your thoughts down. It forces you to reflect. And even if you're writing all of the random stuff that comes up in your head, it's still healing. So I love that. Thank you,
Mhm.
Jamie. Thank you for everything.
You're welcome.
All right. Any last things you want to add for the audience?
I would just say just keep the idea in mind of becoming a student of yourself. Just learn yourself what you need, what you want, and because even with the ups and downs, there's so much more of life to enjoy. We don't have to wallow in the mud every day, even when the rest of the world is intent on living in crap. You don't have to. We don't have to.
It is a
There's
choice.
so many more things in life to enjoy, and if you take care of yourself, if you work on yourself, you can you can enjoy those things. Being hobbies, experiences, relationships, all those things are there for you. And if you need help, if you just feel like you can't go on, just reach out to somebody, anybody. There are people out there that I'm in a helping profession because I know what it feels like. So
And
I
because we want to
want
help.
to help people. Right. There are people out there that are sitting and waiting. This not
Yeah.
sounding like a telethon or a fundraiser, but there are people sitting waiting to listen. Find someone. Don't let anything or anybody, even that inner voice, keep you from getting the help that you want and
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, you have to consider that you're also helping someone else. If somebody came to me with their own chronic illness struggles and talked to me about it and allowed me to help them, they're also helping me fulfill my purpose and that pull that I feel in my soul to help other people that are going through that or to prevent other people from going through what I went through because I learned a lot of stuff through the trial and error and maybe I can help you get through it on your first try. So absolutely
Mm-hmm.
consider that you're also helping by being helped. That's something I don't think a lot of people think about.
Yes.
Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Jamie. It was a pleasure to have you, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you very much. I enjoyed it.
Take care. Jamie, thank you for sharing your courage and your truth here with us today. Your story reminds us that biology and belief are partners, that even when trauma shapes us, it doesn't define us. For everyone listening, healing isn't a destination. It's a dialogue between your body, your mind, and your soul. Your biology is malleable. Your mind is trainable, and your spirit is unbreakable as soon as you decide it is. You can connect with Jamie and explore his work through the links in the show notes. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs proof that the human heart can rebuild itself. This is Shine In and Out, where science meets soul. And until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep shining.